Our dear God and our great Father in heaven, we are so grateful that we can come before you today, that you have given us health and safety to be here today, to worship you and to glorify your name, and at this time to study your word, to see how you deal with your people of old and how you love them and care for them and take care of them in a great way. And please help us to learn from these things, learn to trust you, and learn to grow in love for you as well. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so we are in the divided kingdom. So everybody know their king songs? Got them down? No? All right. Well, we'll keep working on it. All right, kings of Israel, starting with Jeroboam, all right? Jeroboam, Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, Omri, Ahab, Ahaziah, Joram, Jehu, Jehoahaz, Joash, Jeroboam, two, Zechariah, Shalom, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah, Hoshea. All right, Judah. Kings of Judah, starting with Rehoboam. Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa, and Jehoshaphat, Joram, Ahaziah, Athaliah, Joash, Amaziah, and Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Ammon, and Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah. All right. Even after we sing the song, you guys are all shaking your heads. All right. Okay, so let's see. Which kings of Judah have we discussed so far? Rehoboam? Yep. Yeah, okay, we haven't really gotten to Jehoshaphat yet, so we're kind of Rehoboam, Ahijah, and Asa. Okay, so which of those were the good kings, or a good king? Asa. Okay, Asa is the one good king we've covered so far of Judah, and remember he had a long reign. So if you kind of look here, Asa had a long reign, and meanwhile we've discussed all these other kings of Israel. Of course, none of them were good kings, and there's a lot of upheaval, a lot of chaos there, and then you get to Ahab. All right. Son of Omri, and that's who we're discussing now. Along with Ahab and all of his evil, what prophet rises to speak to Ahab? Elijah, okay? And so we've talked about Elijah, and specifically on Wednesday, what sort of great deed does Elijah do opposing Ahab and the prophets of Baal? Okay? He shows that God is God, that God is the true God, right? As opposed to Baal. How? Okay? The challenge on Mount Carmel. All right? So the challenge specifically as to which God would answer and call down fire on the sacrifice. And of course, the prophets of Baal do not. But God does rain down fire and consume the sacrifice for Elijah. And then what happens? Yeah, okay, they kill all the prophets of Baal, all 450 prophets of Baal. And then after this, of course, all this has been going on while there was a drought, which was called by Elijah, and God answered his prayer. And then after that, the rain comes, right? And we have the story where, as we end chapter 18, Elijah actually tells Ahab to go back to Jezreel, but then Elijah runs and outruns the chariot back to Jezreel. All right? So all of that we pick up then in chapter 19. So Ahab is home now, and what does he do? Tells Jezebel about what happened. Okay? And specifically that all the prophets of Baal were killed with a sword. All right? Yes?
I'm starting to get a different picture of Ahab, I guess. He runs home and Jezebel about what Elijah did. Later on, we're going to see he wants the vineyard that's right next to the castle, and he can't get it. And so what's he do? He goes home, lays in bed, sulking, and here comes Jezebel saying, "Are you king or aren't you?" So
Yep.
he seems to be somewhat of a wimp to me.
Yep. Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what I put. Who's really in charge here? Jezebel, right? Ahab is not the strong king that his father was and Omri was, right? And I agree. What the picture is, he's kind of a wimpy guy, right? He's like, oh, they killed all the prophets. I'll go home and tell Jezebel about it, right? And Jezebel's like, well, okay. And Jezebel takes action. We'll see the same thing with, like you said, with Naboth's vineyard. At the end of our lesson today, after he kind of gets corrected by a prophet, it talks about him going home and sulking. Basically, says he was vexed and sullen. Right? He's just kind of this. It's interesting when Elijah talks to him. He does what Elijah says, right? But then, Jezebel's really the one pulling all the strings, right? Okay, so Jezebel is going to do something about it, unlike Ahab, and what is she going to do? Yeah, okay, she threatens to kill Elijah, all right? So what's Elijah's reaction to that? He runs. Why? He's afraid, all right? So the text specifically says he's afraid, all right? So does he have good reason to be afraid? Yes and no, okay. Okay, all right. From a worldly perspective, does he have good reason to be afraid? Yes, okay. Has Jezebel done this before? Yes, when? Yeah, back in chapter 18, all right? In verse 4, she's already been killing the prophets, right? And remember, you have the story there where Obadiah is saving them, and he's got kind of like a underground railroad of prophets trying to save them, right? Okay, so notice that her specific statement is that she swears by the gods to may the gods do more to me if I don't make your life like one of the prophets that you killed. In other words, if I don't have you killed by tomorrow, may the gods kill me. All right, that's her swearing. All right, so this is revenge, specifically revenge for the prophets of Baal. She's going to kill Elijah. All right, and so. He's afraid, all right? And as you said, he's run. We'll talk more about that in a second. So what does he do? So he's afraid. What else do we see as we go through the text? What do you see from Elijah? What is he feeling?
Well, he feels overwhelmed. I mean, he just went through a massive undertaking, and maybe he feels alone at the moment, but in his running, he still sat down to pray. Okay.
Yep. All right. So his fear leads him down, right? He's led to a level of despair, being overwhelmed. You mentioned what? Another hand, yeah.
That he's all alone. That he's
Okay.
the only one left.
He's alone. All right. We see him feeling alone, overwhelmed. Jesse.
Previously, you don't see any record of him complaining or any sort of despair. And now all of a sudden, I think this is where you had to start growing.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a growing point. All right. Amanda.
Well, he wants to die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody who wants to die is very desperate. They feel despair.
Okay, so the level he sinks to in verse 4 is that he wishes to be dead. All right? Now, he doesn't say he's going to take his own life, but he wishes that God would take his life. All right, so he feels so low at this point that he's ready to be dead. Okay?
To me, this is brought on by exhaustion.
Okay?
He's just exhausted fighting the battle.
Okay?
And because of that, because of the exhaustion, now he's at his lowest point, where he just can't cope.
Agreed, and I think that's a good point. I think it goes along with Nick's point about being overwhelmed. Okay? A lot of times those things go together. Okay? There's another hand over here. Oh,
I'm going to say Vince Lombardi, the football coach, said, fatigue makes college in song.
yes? Okay? That's a good point. All right? Yep, all right.
I think that to a certain degree, he's leaving God out of the picture. Because he just obeyed God's command to confront can do with God. And when God speaks to him when he's in the cave, I know I'm getting ahead of things, but it's interesting because God says, what are you doing here? He doesn't say, what are you doing there? What are you doing here? And in my mind, God is trying to let him know, I'm still around. I'm still with you.
Yeah.
I'm here with you.
Yeah, and I do think he doesn't completely leave God out, because to Nick's point, he does go and speak to God, right? So he is going to the source, which is really, really important, okay? But at the same point, he's not thinking clearly about God, okay? So let's just think about it for a second, and I see a couple more hands here. But let's just think about it. He wishes to be dead. What has God proven in the last couple of chapters? He's the God of life, all right? So I talked about this in the invitation on Sunday, right? That he starts with, Elijah says he's the living God, right? And then he proves that he's the God of life, first by taking care of Elijah, right? By feeding him miraculously throughout the drought, and then by saving the life of the widow and her son, and then bringing the son back to life. All of that is God is the living God who brings life. And so how sad at this point, right after that, Elijah wants to be dead. Right? You see that? Isn't that's sad? Okay, yeah.
Well, one of the great lessons I get from this is that sometimes we may feel alone, but we got to remember, like what God said, I got 7,000 men he killed down the hill. So even though we may not be experiencing certain things at certain times, God says, if you keep it in mind, somebody somewhere is doing right. You're not the only one that's doing right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we'll get to, right? So it starts with how he's feeling, but how he's feeling doesn't necessarily match reality, right? Nick?
It reminds me a lot of Peter walking on the water, how he was courageous, he went at Jesus' word, but this exhaustion, this level of exhaustion that caused him to lose focus so much that he, for a moment, forgets what God has brought him through and doesn't realize that he can continue to bring him through this storm as well. So,
Yeah, right, okay. Amanda, and then...
I think that he remembers Mount Carmel, and he feels like he was unsuccessful. I think that he remembers, he's thinking he remembers everything, and he does. He remembers Mount Carmel, he remembers Jezebel killing all the prophets, he remembers all of what has happened, but in the end, here he is, still being threatened. Nobody believes him, it feels like. To him, he's alone again. So what good is his work doing? I think that's what's leading to this despair.
Yeah, so let's stick on that point for a second, and then I'll get here, and then another hand in the back. All right. Amanda says that he feels like his work was pointless, that everything that he did was in vain. What does he say in the text that would lead to that idea? Okay, yeah, it's enough. All right, what else? I am no better than my fathers. All right, now we don't really know much about his fathers. I get the idea that maybe his fathers were prophets. Okay, but in some way he's pointing towards his fathers who were apparently faithful to God, and he's saying, I couldn't do any better than them. All right, so we think about if they were prophets, that would make prophets were frequently rejected, right? And we tend to get an idea like, well, it'll be better for me, right? Like, I can do it better, okay? And a lot of times that doesn't work out, right? And in his mind, like Amanda said, he's done all this work, right? And what's the other thing he says later on down in verse 10? I'm sorry? Okay, even before that, though. Yeah, I've been very jealous or very zealous for the Lord, right? And still the people aren't obeying. Still the people aren't listening, right? So it's like, I've done all this great stuff. I just won this huge, great battle for the Lord. And what was the point? What good did it do? The people still serve Baal, and I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me, right? So you see that again, when we get overwhelmed, right? Again, it's very easy for us to think, wow, well, who cares, right? I did all this good stuff. I worked hard, right? I've been zealous, working hard, and still, who listens, right? Who cares? People still don't listen, and it's very easy for us to build that narrative, that story in our head, right? Okay. There were more here, and then Jesse.
One part of this that I think about is that he's physically exhausted, and I think we don't figure that in enough too when we're struggling. Our bodies are here on earth, they wear out, they're not strong, and our spirits have to live within them. And he's exhausted. He is physically exhausted. He's been running already, and he's running in fear, so that all those things are affecting the body. The hormones are going to make you scared. So he's physical, and I think this is part of it. And I love the fact that we're going to see a nap and some food is going to happen.
Yes, exactly right. And I agree with your point. All these things are so frequently tied together, right? The way we think emotionally is so frequently tied to how we're feeling physically, right? If we're exhausted, is it easier to pull ourselves out of negativity or to sink further into negativity, right? When we're tired, it's so easy to think negatively, right? To fall into all these things, okay? And so we'll get to the solution in a minute, but yeah, I agree. All these things are tied in together, and it's easy for us to kind of try to jump into solution mode in our head when we need to start thinking about everything, right? Think physically first, and then work on what's in our head. Okay, yes. Sorry, go ahead, and then Jesse.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So
Okay.
he's already exhibited those, but I think there's a couple more things that he's saying that I'm no better than my fathers. I think it's prophets that were killed before him. I'm no better than them. Why am I still alive? And the final fact is that he's hungry. That has a lot to do with what our minds will do too. Unless we're intentionally fasting and doing these things, he's running in fear, so therefore his hunger is taking over his mind cells.
Yeah, we've got a word for hangry, right? We created a word for the fact that being hungry, not taking care of ourselves physically, creates mental. Right? Jesse, I'm sorry.
It seems like a contradiction when you see the great things he did through the Lord, and then when you see what he ended up doing. But I see it as an encouragement because Scripture says he was a man just like us. So you can see he can fall and stumble and see where his strength comes from.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really important point, right? As great as the man Elijah was, these feelings come to him, right? To the point of him wanting to be dead. Like, this is serious. This isn't like, oh, I'm discouraged for an hour and I'll feel better in the morning. This guy is seriously in despair. Okay? However you want to define it. Depression, I mean, this is serious despair. So, do people of God ever feel these things? No. Yes. Are we immune to these feelings because we're followers of God? Absolutely not. Elijah wasn't. Why do we think we should never feel these things? Yes.
It reminds me of Jesus in the garden. His exhaustion, the anticipation of what is going to happen. He pleads with God to take it from him, that he doesn't have to do it. And you notice that God sent the angels to minister to him, to strengthen him. Everyone needs to be strengthened when you're exhausted, when you're tired, when you're fighting everything that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good point. I mean, this is not the only case of people of God feeling this way, okay? It's a really, really good case of it. I think we'll see to help us understand it, but it's not the only case. And so just the fact that we're having these feelings doesn't make us not a Christian, doesn't make us not a follower of God, okay? They need to be dealt with, all right? We don't want these feelings to just sit there and stay, okay? And we're going to see them be dealt with, okay? But the fact that these feelings come to us should not be some source of guilt that, wow, I'm not a good Christian, I'm not a follower of Christ because I'm having this situation happen. All right, it's really important. All right, more hands.
If people feel like that, then they haven't read the Psalms.
100%. Everybody hear what he said? If you feel that way, if you feel like you shouldn't ever have these feelings, you haven't read the Psalms. Right? And who wrote the Psalms? David, a man after God's own heart. We preached a sermon on Psalms of Lament. There are more Psalms of Lament than there are of praise. Okay? Why is that? Because people of God feel these things, and we need to deal with it, and we need to go to the right source. Okay? Is there another hand? Yes.
It's one of the challenges of teaching and preaching and so on. They've responded. They say the Lord, He is God. He achieves something, but then they disperse. And this is what happens on Sunday mornings. You know, we hear a great sermon, we hear a great Bible lesson, and then we go home and, for a teacher, you wonder, okay, did I really accomplish anything? Especially a few months later, as, you've been maybe dealing with a particular subject and you see no change. You feel like, okay, this has been worthless. But there's other times that people have found themselves in despair, such as Jonah, who sees the grace of God, the mercy of God, the love, the forgiveness, and he didn't want that.
Yeah.
So, you have both spectrums of despair. Someone's upset because there are those who respond positively.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's a good point, like I said, for leaders, right? It's very, again, especially for leaders, if you don't see, like, it doesn't look like you're making an impact, or maybe temporarily, but then it doesn't seem to last, right? Those things can lead to, like I said, these negative thoughts, negative feelings, all right? I want to make this point about him being lonely. A couple of you guys mentioned that, all right? Isolation, all right, leads, again, something that leads to more negative thoughts. I only left. Has he said that before? He actually has. When did he say that?
Before the test.
Right before the test, he said that same thing when he was going against the prophets. He said, I only left. So that feeling, that thought was there, right? And then it comes kind of like you guys said, crashing home, right? After he runs all the way to Jezreel, he's exhausted, and then he hears this news about Jezebel wanting to kill him, and so that idea was there, and then it all kind of comes crashing down. Right? That's the picture. Nice. All right. So that's how he's feeling. So what does he do? You guys have already said it. What does he do? Okay, he goes to God, but first he runs. Run for your life. That's literally what it says. Okay? He runs for his life. He's got to get out of there because Jezebel's trying to kill him. Okay? Where does he go? All right, first he goes to Beersheba. All right? Is that a quick walk down the street? No? Okay? It's over 100 miles. Okay? Probably along the road. I read 90 miles as the crow flies, but following the road, it would have been over 100 miles. Okay? This is on foot?
Yeah.
Okay? So, this is not a quick jaunt. Okay? Now, the text specifically tells us when he comes to Beersheba, what's important about Beersheba? It's in Judah. Why does that matter? Yeah, okay, so we're out of Israel, we're out of Jezebel's territory. Alright, I was going to write Ahab's territory, nothing right? He's trying to get away from Jezebel, so he's in Judah now, right? So he's out of her territory, okay? And notice then, he leaves his servant there. Okay? So now he's completely alone. Okay? Sometimes our loneliness, our isolation is self-inflicted. Right? I don't know why he left the servant there, but it's interesting. Right? Okay? But so is he done? He's out of range, he's done? Now what? Okay, but even before that, even before Sinai, okay, yeah, he goes a day's journey into the wilderness. Alright? When the Bible says wilderness, we think desert. Okay? Beersheba is way down south, right, already. In the wilderness, in the desert. Now he goes a day's journey further out, so he's nowhere, right? He's literally in the middle of nowhere. The only thing there is what? A broom tree. So the only protection is a broom tree, so he stays there in that shape. Now he falls asleep. Okay? So he sleeps twice, the second time in God's direction. Alright? What else happens there? Okay, alright. So an angel comes to him and feeds him. And hydrates him with water. Okay? Twice, again. Okay? Yes.
I love it in Hebrews 2, the last, Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 14, talking about angels. Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to render service for the sake of those who will inherit salvation? Talking about the angels, and to me this is a really good
So does God leave him alone in his misery?
No.
No. He's there for him. He's there to help him in very specific ways. Okay, we'll talk more about that. All right, but is he done now? He's out a day out in the wilderness. He's in the middle of nowhere. He's done.
No.
No. Now where does he go?
To a cave.
Okay, but where's the cave? What? Mount Horeb. What else? What other name do we know Mount Horeb? Sinai. Okay, 40 days and 40 nights journey to get to Mount Sinai. All right, and it calls it there specifically the Mount of God. Okay, because what else? And here, and lives in a cave. All right, what else? What do we think of when we think of Sinai?
Moses.
Moses. Moses encountered God on Sinai, right? When at the giving of the law. And there's specific things here. So it's not an accident that he ends up at Sinai. All right? It's not an accident that the text tells us it was 40 days. Remember how long was Moses on the mountain? 40 days. Okay, so there's very specific texts that are calling our mind back to that. But the experience is very different, right? Because Elijah's in a very different place mentally. Okay? But a lot of similarities in these encounters. Okay? All right. So I want us to just think about the whole thing, not just on the mountain, but starting from the time that he runs. How does God help Elijah? What specific things does God do to help Elijah in this situation? Oh, hold on. Before we go there, here's a map, just so you guys can see. All right. So here's the map. So you see Mount Carmel up here, right? By the way, just Tom mentioned a lot of good reasons why the contest happened on Mount Carmel. Another one is you can see it's right up here on the edge of Tyre, the land of Tyre and Sidon. So when he says, how long will you falter between two opinions? You see, they're literally between the two places, okay? So he runs from Mount Carmel to Jezreel. That's not a short trip, okay? So he outruns the chariot there. Now he goes from Jezreel all the way down here to Beersheba. All right, remember Beersheba is like this typical southern border of Israel, right? Dan to Beersheba, all the way down here, you get to no man's land down here, right? All right, I got a couple pictures here. We'll go through these quickly. This is Beersheba, so you can see there's a mound there with excavation of the ancient city of Beersheba there. If we zoom out a little bit, here's Beersheba right here, and you can see there's not much around there, right? This is where you're getting down into the wilderness. And it's from there that he goes a day's journey into the wilderness already, okay? Here's a broom tree. You ever wonder what a broom tree looks like? You can see there's a little shade over there, okay? So that'd be a good place to be in the hot desert. All right, and then we have to zoom way out because he's going to go from Jezreel to Beersheba here, all the way down here to Sinai, in the Sinai Peninsula, almost down to the Red Sea, okay? So this is a long journey, and it's sometimes maybe we don't quite realize that this whole thing is there's some time happening here, right? Okay. All right, here's Mount Sinai. What we think, as you can see, if you zoomed out, there's a whole range, but they think possibly this is the actual the peak there. Here's a cave in the Sinai region. So you can imagine Elijah being there in a cave, something like that. Okay, so now, what specific steps did God do to help Elijah in this situation?
He asked him a question.
Okay, he asked him a question. And I want to go back from the very start of this trip. What does he do?
Verse 5, he sends an angel, and the angel feeds him at 6, 7, and 8, the angel fed him a second time, and 9, God spoke to him, and verse 11, God gives him orders, gives him purpose, you might say. Verse 12, shows his power by the strong wind, the earthquake. I don't know, we won't get shot.
No, that's good. You're listening my whole slide here.
Yeah, the strong wind, the earthquake, the fire, and then it's a still small voice.
Yeah.
That's pretty impactful.
Okay.
When Hutton speaks, verses 15 through 18, God gave Elijah specific orders. Elijah had, a purpose, he had a mission. Now he needed to go and accomplish.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so number 1, he gives him rest and food and water. So the first thing God does is he takes care of the physical problems. Right? Everything you guys have been saying, I think, is spot on about him being exhausted, about him being hungry, thirsty. And so many times, if we're feeling something, or if we go to try to help someone who's in despair, we like, well, what's going on with you? And we try to solve the problem, right? Well, sometimes we need to back up, and I've experienced this with people. Like, okay, the first question is, are you sleeping? Right? Are you eating? Are you drinking? Are you taking care of yourself? Because we can give a whole lot of perfect answers to somebody who's paying no attention because their body it's like a brick wall because their body is just shut down. Right? Okay? The first thing God does is he takes care of them physically. Twice. Right? All right. Then somebody said, whoever it says, ask him a question. Okay. So when God sees this and God sees Elijah talking about wishing he were dead and all these things, so if we hear someone say that, we immediately recoil, right? Like, oh, what are you talking about, right? That's not good. Okay? Does God immediately jump on that? And hey, what are you talking about? You're totally wrong. What does God do?
What are you doing?
Ask him a question.
What are you doing?
What are you doing here? Okay, and I agree with what Bill, was saying. Like, it's a question intended to make him think. Like, why are you here? Had God told him to go there? No. Okay, so why are you here? God asked that question in verse 9, and Elijah responds. Does he answer the question? No. What does he do?
Gives an excuse. All the things he's feeling.
Yeah, he expresses all the things he's feeling, right? Okay? Does God immediately launch in after that? You got it all wrong, Elijah. No, God allows him to express his despair. Okay? Get the feelings out. So many times just saying it is so helpful, right?
Well, that was one of the things that I listened. God listened to Elijah's complaints and all that he had been through too. So that was a really huge thing because, I was just thinking of what do we do whenever a child gets lost, or what does a child do? If they get frantic, they're scared. When they come back to the parent or an adult, what are you doing here? What's wrong? Why are you this way?
Right.
So it's like, what a wonderful Father we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Joel mentioned the Psalms. All right? We think about the Psalms of Lament. Do we have the opportunity to go and speak our troubles to God? To speak our despair, our depression to God? Does he want to hear it? Yes. He does. Okay? Same thing he's doing here with Elijah. We have the same opportunity. All right. What God does do, though, okay, so God doesn't come out and immediately correct everything, but he demonstrates his power and his care for him, right? So, how does God demonstrate his power? The strong wind is breaking rocks on the mountain, right? This is a serious wind, okay? Earthquake, fire. Another way that this is like Moses did last night. But earthquake and fire, okay? Does God speak to Elijah in the wind and the earthquake and the fire and the power and his might? Show him what's up?
No.
Show him what's right?
No.
How does he speak to him?
In a small whisper.
Then he comes in a small whisper. His power is there, but he speaks in a small whisper. And what does he say? Repeats his question.
What are you doing here?
Elijah didn't really answer that. That's okay, but God repeats the question. Okay? What are you doing here? Now it says Elijah goes out and stood at the entrance of the cave. See what's going on? Now Elijah can listen because God's come to him in a small, caring voice. Okay? All right? And then, as Daryl mentioned, God gives him a task. Yep.
I just thought it was really interesting that after all of this, when God asked him the same question, he basically does the same thing again. He doesn't, it's like he hasn't really, okay, now you're going to listen to me, so here it is again. I'm all mad about all this stuff.
So when we're in despair and depression and someone comes and tells us the right thing, it sinks in right away and we're good to go, right? That's how it works. Not how it works for life. Okay, Dale, we're going to talk.
I think it's a great example for us on how we can speak to one another.
Yes.
Even if we're angry, if there's something we really need to get across, we need to tell them what's what, we still need to do it in a gentle way. That's just going to be more impactful.
Yeah. Sorry, did I?
No.
Sorry. Okay. Yes, exactly. And that's the reason I'm spending some time on this, these are things we need for ourselves. These are also really important ways if we're trying to help somebody else, right? And especially to Dale's point, we need to understand the situation, okay? We speak to different people in different situations in different ways, okay? But if someone is feeling down, in despair, and depressed, it's going to take some patience. It's going to take some working with it. It's not going to just happen and, okay, I go talk to them for 15 minutes and everything's good, right?
I think we need to understand what Elijah was all thinking. See, up on Mount Carmel, it was all going God's way, according to Elijah. The prophets of Baal were defeated. Ahab was right there. And so Elijah thought, everything's good. Everything's good. We're going to turn it all around. We're going to turn everything around here. They're going to turn the people back to God, back to Yahweh. That's what Elijah thought. So then he gets just real, and Elijah thinks that Ahab is turned back to God. That's what Elijah thought. And then it doesn't happen. And that's what makes Elijah afraid, because he thought everything was good. And it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good point. Again, the spiritual high is great, but it can also, if it's followed by disappointment, it can lead to a spiritual low that sinks really low.
And that's why Elijah says, I want to die. Because he thought he failed. He failed. And God had to bring him back in line.
That's a good point. Thank you, Brandon.
I think when we're talking with people who have struggled or are struggling with depression or despair, if they are a godly person, unlike Jonah, one of the worst fears they have is that in their depression they are sinning. Elijah was afraid he was depressed because he thought he was failing God. So to tell someone that they're not being who God wants them to be, that they're sinning in this, is actually going to bring more harm than good.
Yes, exactly. Good point. Now, that doesn't mean the person just sits there, right? Okay? So God does give him a task. It's a simple task. It's a task you can accomplish. Okay? So there is something for him to do, because the only thing that happens when we start feeling this way is it's very, well, it can go one of two ways typically, right? One way is we just work through it, right? Push it all aside, don't pay any attention to our feelings, we'll just work through it, right? And the other way is we just kind of turn it into a puddle of mud and don't do anything, okay? God's solution is neither of those things. He gives him a simple task, a task he can accomplish, something that makes him feel useful, worthwhile, he can do it, but he doesn't put the world right on his shoulders, like, we got to get it all done right now, right? Otherwise, you're not using the control. Fix it all right now, right? It's a middle ground. Yes, sir.
I would question, I grapple with myself in regard to the question that God poses. And my conclusion is going to be, what are you doing here, Elijah, is a rebuke. It is, you're in the wrong place. And whether that's emotional, it's spiritual, it's physical, all could be the case. So I don't know, I pray for discernment on this passage, because we're not told explicitly. But if someone says, okay, what are you doing here? It's like, okay, you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I do think he's in the wrong place, and God has pointed that out to him, but he's pointing it out in the form of a question, right? He's not just hammering him with it. He's giving him a question that isn't giving him to think about what's going on, okay? Which goes to my next point, is that God is telling him the truth. All right? You guys have mentioned this already. Is it true that Elijah is all alone, isolated in the world, the only person who serves God? No. God's going to tell him there are 7,000 who have to serve Baal. And the reality is, the hints are out there already, right? That you have Obadiah out there saving the prophets, right? When Elijah wins the battle and he calls the people, he doesn't go out and kill all the prophets. People come and kill the prophets. So it's out there, but in his mind, as he's sinking down in this negativity, he's the only one, but that's not reality. How he feels, it's not reality. Okay? Now, the second point is it better for him to die? Is everything he's doing useless? Meaningless? No. Okay? God has been proving he is the giver of life. Right? God is proving he's there to take care of him. And so he's telling stories in his head, but they're not the reality, and God shows him the truth. And this is what happens. It's very easy for us to tell ourselves things, to spin on the narrative in our head, especially when all these other things are going on, and we just kind of go down and down and down, and we got to break into that with the truth. And again, if we're helping someone else, we have to break into that with truth, gently, in the right way, but they need the truth. All right? So being helpful, being kind to someone is just not like, oh yeah, I know, it's so bad. Well, some of that is being empathetic, but if that's where it ends, and they just walk away continuing to believe the wrong thing, we're not actually helping. Okay? All right, I know there's more hands, we got to keep moving on, okay? And then God gives him a helper, right? By the end of the chapter, Elisha is his helper, his assistant, right? So he's not alone, okay? So God gives him help. So all these things, and the point being, as you guys have said, these are the ways that we need to help other people as well. We need to help ourselves with these ways to the extent we can, right? Tell ourselves the truth, break through the narrative in our head, all these things, take care of ourselves physically. But it's also the way we can help other people when we find them in these kinds of situations. Okay?
I'd really like to comment about this, when he tells him, well, there's Elisha I'm going to give him carry. The idea that you look at your work, you feel like that maybe you have failed and all your work has gone for naught, is made even worse when you think, well, after I leave, who's going to carry on? And, you know, I've said this to Daryl several times, that I have absolute confidence in him that he is going to take this congregation further than I have been able to take them as far as the future. I think the future of the Hammond Church is very bright because of the hard work that he's doing. Been here 20 years, it's not easy to leave this congregation, but I am confident that everybody here is in good hands as far as our elders and as far as Daryl and the work that he's going to be doing.
Yeah, appreciate that. All right, we're going to fly through the rest of this here. We spent a lot of time on that, and I'm glad because I think it's really, really important. Obviously, it speaks to you guys based on the participation, and I appreciate that. But we are going to fly through this last section here. All right, so what are the 3 tasks that God gives Elijah?
Point the king of Syria.
Okay.
Israel.
Appoint this guy Hazael to be king of Syria. What do you say next?
King of Israel.
Okay. Appoint Jehu to be king of Israel, and then anoint Elisha to be your successor. Okay. Which of those 3 does Elijah do? Yeah, just the last one, really. Even that is kind of, that's not exactly anointing, but at least he's appointing him, okay? He never does the first 2 at all. And that's going to be a problem. So just put that in the back of your mind for now. And again, maybe that's his state of mind at this point. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he doesn't do 1 and 2 at all. And that's going to be a problem. Okay? All right. So he does go, though, and call Elisha. All right? So he throws his coat on Elisha. All right, so this is where you get the phrase passing the mantle. Right? He's with the mantle, the coat, literally throwing his coat on him. Elisha immediately understands that he's supposed to go and follow him. So this was obviously some kind of understood thing that they did. Elisha asks to go and say goodbye to his parents first, and Elijah allows it. Actually gives kind of an answer. He's like, okay, what have I done here? Do what you want. So he does, and he says goodbye to his parents. Note that in Luke 9:61, Jesus is almost certainly referring back to this, okay, in the context of following him, and Jesus says we're not supposed to go back. So following Jesus is even more important than what's happening here. All right, don't have time to spend on that. But Elisha goes with Elijah, becomes his assistant. All right, chapter 20, you have the king of Syria, this guy Ben-Hadad. Anybody remember what is anybody know, what does the name Ben-Hadad mean? Hadad means Baal.
Son.
Yeah, and Ben means son. So the guy's name, the king of Syria, is son of Baal. So when he comes and surrounds Samaria, and Ahab gets scared and pledges his allegiance to Ben-Hadad, Ahab is pledging his allegiance to the son of Baal. Did that? Okay? What could Ahab have done instead? Well, he could have asked for help for God, like Asa did. Okay? But he doesn't do that. So Ben-Hadad comes, son of Baal comes and says, all your stuff is mine. And Ahab, being the strong guy that he does, says, okay, sure, sounds good. And Ben-Hadad says, okay, great, I'll come get all your stuff tomorrow. Your stuff, your wives, your children will come in and give them to me tomorrow. And then Ahab's like, whoa. What's going on here? So he goes, consults all his elders, and they say, hey, you need to stand up to this guy. And then they have a back and forth, and basically, long story short, there's going to be a big battle. Right? Notice that Ben-Hadad vowed, the gods do so to me and more also, the exact same thing Jezebel said. Okay? But a prophet shows up. Ahab never goes and inquires, but a prophet shows up anyway and says, who's going to win? Ahab. Maybe a surprise, but says, Ahab, you're going to win. You're going to beat this Syrian guy. Why? So you will know that I am the Lord. So did God, as bad as Ahab was, did God give him chances? After chance, after chance, after chance? Yes. You will know that I am the Lord. So, Ahab wins. With only 7,000 men, Ben-Hadad is drunk. Ahab wins the battle. Anyway, Ahab wins the battle. Like God said, now there's going to be a part 2. It says, hey, guess what? In the spring, there's going to be a second battle. In the meantime, the Syrians go back and say, hey, they only won because that was fought in the mountains, and their God is the God of the mountains. And we've seen this idea before, but here's where it's articulated clearly. There was this pagan idea that the gods were the gods of a certain region. Okay? So they say, hey, if we go down and fight in the valleys, that's where our gods are stronger and we're going to win. Remember in Joshua, Israel struggled when they went into the valleys where all the chariots were. Okay? So, Israel's like 2 little flocks of goats, but the Syrians filled the country. But here's the man of God shows up again. Ahab doesn't inquire, but the man of God shows up again and says, hey, you're going to win. Why? Because they said the Lord is not a God of the valleys. You're going to win, and then you shall know that I am the Lord. In other words, again, just like God showed with Baal, and meaning that God is the one who's in control of the weather, that God is the one who controls life. God is a God everywhere. He's not regional, he's not a God here, but your God is better there. This is the God of everything because he created everything, right? And so he wins. Again. Alright, surprisingly. But what's Ahab's problem? He spares Ben-Hadad. We are out of time, but the point being, they hear that there's merciful kings, they come and ask, hey, please be merciful to us. And Ahab says, Ben-Hadad? Oh, he's my brother. Which is super weird. And they're like, oh yeah, Ben-Hadad, your brother, that guy. And he spares him, they make a trade so that Ahab gets taxing rights on the trade routes. And the son of the prophet shows up again and has a message. The point being, if I came up to you and said, hey, hit me in the face as hard as you can, would you do that? I hope not. Right? That doesn't sound right. But if a prophet says, God says to hit me in the face as hard as you can, well, if God said it, you do it. Right? And that's the point here. Ahab sparing him was like Saul sparing Agag. Specifically said he should go into destruction. And so again, Ahab is not obeying, and God demands obedience, even what we might think of as mercy. I wish we had more time on that point. But there's a lot of people who will talk about mercy and kindness, and that's not God's definition of mercy at all. What they really are is being disobedient. Alright? That's how we talk about all this. We need to help people in the exact same way that God helped Elijah, and we need to recognize that that's how God helps us. He doesn't leave us alone. He helps us. And it's not just God helps us in our trouble. He helps us in very specific ways that we want to take advantage of. All right? Thank you very much. Great class. Appreciate that. On Wednesday, chapter 20 and 21. Sorry, 21 and most of 22.